We're good? Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for Monday, September 9th, 2024. I will call the meeting to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda, please. Councilor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the agenda as amended to allow for the opportunity to undertake closed session items prior to the timing of delegations at 5 p.m.
All right, thank you. Amended motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And just for the record, at the moment, Councilor Bruin is not present. I'm still expecting him tonight, but we will go with the 6 for now. So, moving on to public hearings. There are no public hearings. Adoption of the minutes. Item 4.1, minutes of regular meeting of council, August 19th, 2024. Mr. Thibault.
Nothing noted in the minutes, so over to council for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? So I'm prepared to make that required motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on August 19th, 2024 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5, business arising are none. Item 6, bylaws. Item 6.1, long-term borrowing, 41st Avenue cast iron replacement. Mr. Thibault.
We'll have Mr. Orwell come forward and speak to this borrowing bylaw.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roy.
Good afternoon, members of council.
Good afternoon.
Now, before you is the long-term borrowing bylaw. This is 41 Avenue cast iron. And I think this is something that is very familiar because it has already gone through council. But we ended up with a small problem. Now, I think I'll just go into where the problem is so that it will be easier to explain. So if you scroll down to the bylaw, I think I highlighted in yellow. If you go to the current bylaw, go to 4.0. So this is where the problem is. Now, I've gone so many times to the province to convince them what we're trying to do. So remember, if recall, we were going through the utilities when we actually get a loan. Now, when we did the rehab loan, that particular line was reading each year, instead of municipal taxes, we had put infrastructure fee. Now, this time around, they said, no, we are not going to give you the loan until you change that. Because to them, it should be municipal taxes and not utilities. So they are holding onto the money until we change that thing back to taxes. I think I'll just leave it at that. That is exactly what they want. So right now, they're holding that money until I change that and send the new bylaw. They want everything to flow through municipal taxes. My question was, why did they allow the first one? And the answer is, it was an oversight. I must have costed somebody's job at the province, but we've now been assigned a new loan officer. So that's why we have this bylaw before you today.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Roy? Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, all of our efforts are in vain. And we have to put it back and just undo everything that we did. Anyways, no questions, just a comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Mr. Orwa. So just to clarify, does this mean that we can no longer service this loan through the infrastructure fee? Or is it just that they would like it to say in the bylaw that it's coming from municipal taxes?
Sorry, they're forcing us to pass it through taxes because the explanation I gave here is even if it is utilities, at the end of the day, if they don't pay, they default, we move this thing back into taxes. So the argument is, if that's the case, then why are you passing through infrastructure fee? So it went for a very long time until I gave up. That is why I attached the final letter that came from the province. It's also attached there to see where the instructions were given. Because I told them if we default, somebody defaults, I still push it through to taxes, but that will not fly.
All right, Councillor Sorensen.
Well, I think our efforts in trying to be transparent through utilities, we tried it, and I guess Councillor Beckering can say, "I told you so." And I'd be prepared to make the first recommendation.
All right, very well.
I make a motion that council gives first reading to long-term borrowing 41st cast iron and sanitary replacement project bylaw 19-2024 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So I'm prepared to make the second required motion. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Sorensen, I'm not a told you so kind of guy, but thank you anyway. I'll move that council give second reading to long-term borrowing 41st Avenue cast iron and sanitary replacement project bylaw 1920-24 at this meeting.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council unanimously agrees to proceed to third and final reading to long-term borrowing 41st Ave cast iron and sanitary replacement project bylaw 19-2024 at this meeting.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the fourth required motion. Councillor Firth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives third and final reading to long-term borrowing 41st Avenue cast iron and sanitary replacement project bylaw 19-2024 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.2, Assessment Review Board Bylaw 2020-24. Mr. Thibault.
Mr. Orwell will continue on and explain what this review board bylaw is about.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Roy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thibault. So before you again is the Assessment Review Board bylaw. So just to give you a quick background here, from time to time after the assessment, there normally appeals. People appeal those assessments if they don't like what they see. So in 2024, we had 2 appeals. Both of them are both commercial. And so far, one of them has been resolved between the owners and our assessors. Now we have one left. So what that means is that is proceeding to hearing, and the hearing is scheduled for November. The challenge we have in our community is we cannot trace those board members with the expertise to sit on those hearings. Now, last time, if you also recall, I did reach out to Benchmark, but so far their clerk has retired. So I had no option, so I had to look around. So this time I reached out to OSC. And OSC has made some proposals there, and they have given us some board members, and also the clerk. So we have to revise the bylaw, because this time we're putting it up to 3 years. The other one was 3 years, very specific. At the same time, we did agree on some remunerations with them. And of course, just for your information, we are also looking at possibilities of bringing them on board to help us permanently in the future. So that's why we have that bylaw before you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Orwell, I see that the remuneration has been taken out of the bylaw. Is that just going to be part of the policy or a contract negotiation? I'm just wondering, how much it is actually going to cost the taxpayers.
So it's almost what you see in the old bylaw, which I've also attached. But I think in this case, there's an agreement that we are working on with them so that we don't hit exactly the target that was in the original bylaw. But whatever they're going to charge is going to be within the same range. So there's an agreement that's going to be signed between OSC and the town, just specifically for this hearing.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives first reading to Assessment Review Board Bylaw 20-2024 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So I'm prepared to make the second required motion. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives second reading to Assessment Review Board Bylaw 20-24 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So I'm prepared to make the third required motion. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move that council unanimously agrees to proceed to third and final reading to Assessment Review Board Bylaw 20-24 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The fourth required motion, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives third and final reading to Assessment Review Board bylaw, 20-2024 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, action items. Item 7.1, appointment of assessment review board members. Mr. Tebow.
We have more Mr. Orwa to stand in front of you, and this follows up from the bylaw you had just passed.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Orwa.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Tibble. That is correct. So from there, we are now appointing the board members. So they have given us the board members to appoint, and I think we'll have 2 or 3 coming in for hearing. Then remember, there's also +1 that comes from the province, and that is provincial appointee. So we have those 2 board members, and then OSC will also give us the clerk that will be running the show for us. So that's what you have before you for those 2 recommendations.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prepare to make a motion. Do you need 2 motions in this particular case, Mr. Tebow? Oh,
Yes.
Okay, I'll make the first motion then. That council appoints the following members to the Assessment Review Board for a 1-year term ending December 31st, 2024. John Hood, board member, chair. Sheila Schmidt, board member. Christopher Northcutt, board member. Russell Norris, board member.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The second required motion,
You betcha, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
McLean.
Go ahead.
You want? All right, Councillor
Okay.
Beckering.
Thank you, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. The council appoints the CEO or designate of the Old Man River Regional Services Commission as the Assessment Review Board clerk for a term ending December 31st, 2024.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.2, proposed policy purchase of alcohol with town funds. Mr. Tebow.
So the administration has put this policy forward. There currently is no policy that deals with purchase of alcohol. And so following best practices of other places, administration would like to put forward a policy that speaks to how we handle purchasing of alcohol. So if there's any questions, over to council.
All right. Thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this like an accepted policy that other governments participate in? Are we just like behind on having this kind of policy? Or is this something that we just have come across and so we feel like we need one?
So there's probably a combination of a few things there. This policy was crafted using, I think it was 3 or 4 other policies. I don't remember the exact places for sure. City of Lethbridge was one that we looked at. It might have been Clare's Home and another couple. And we did run into an occasion where we were put in a potentially uncomfortable spot for alcohol purchase because nothing was mentioned up front about that with the developer interaction. And so we thought it'd be best to have something in place so that from an auditing perspective, we need to be on side as far as what town funds can go towards. So the policy does basically state that alcohol is not something that the town spends their funds on unless there's an exception made, and that's what this policy is speaking to.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Sorensen.
Not a question, but I'd be prepared to make the motion.
All right.
That council approves the alcohol purchased with town funds policy CS-FIN-11 as presented.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.3, second quarter financial statements. Mr. Tebow.
Okay, this might be the last one where Mr. Orwell gets to speak to you.
Thank you very much. So before you again, this is the second quarter financial statements. And of course, these particular statements have gone through the audit committee. That's where we spend a lot of time. And before I give the audit committee members for their comments, there's just one thing that I would like to mention that I keep on observing that we need to look at. So if you go to just the unaudited, to the balance sheet for me, please. Just right there. So, no, up the balance sheet. Yeah, that one. That's the right there. So if you look at, maybe if you can magnify it a little bit. Thank you. And then just scroll up a little bit for the good part. Yeah, that one. So the only thing that I would like to mention is the balance sheet gives us a snapshot of the position, the financial position of the enterprise. So what it means there is if the town was to wind up today or to close down, we have our 31 million from our financial assets, and we have a total liability of 31.3. So there's a net financial debt of 93,747. So that number is the number that we keep on watching as we go. And that particular number is driven by asset retirement obligation, if you remember. We had 12,243,000. And remember, we had to adjust for last year. If you look at that line and see what we had in 2023, we had 7 million in debt. It doesn't mean that the town is in debt. What it does is we just need to follow up our obligations, what we have in the books. That is the only big item that I wanted to mention there. Otherwise, I will hand it over to the audit committee also to share the good news with us.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Well, the meeting was a while back, but as far as I recall, it was all good news. Definitely good news in the investment aspect of it. The projections were quite low and we're actually gaining quite a bit of interest. So good for that. And other than that, I think we're just on a great path forward.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckeren, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would agree with Councilor Sorensen. It was a lengthy meeting. There was considerable discussion about a number of things. You know, and if you look at this statement here on the liabilities, it says asset retirement obligation. It's $12 million something. That means, of course, that we've got to recognize it. That means forever, besides amortization, we'll be in a negative position, right, Mr. Orwa? Thank you.
All right,
Nevertheless, we're in good shape.
thank you. Yes, and I can reiterate exactly what both Councillor Sorensen and Councillor Beckeren are saying. It was a lengthy audit committee meeting, but very informational, and we are in good shape, so no concerns at this stage we're at right now. So thank you so much, Mr. Orwa, and your team. Any other questions arising for Mr. Orwa? All right, no motion required. Councillor Broom, welcome.
Pardon my tardiness.
All right. Are you set? All right, moving on to item 7.4, request for ramp encroachments, 5115 48th Avenue. Mr. Thibault.
So we'll have Ms. Chris Egan and Ms. Selena Newberry come up and speak to what this ramp is about and why it's in front of council.
All right, thank you. Ms. Newberry,
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
good afternoon.
The Planning Department received a request for a ramp encroachment at the property noted at 5115 48th Avenue. Normally, an encroachment is something that is kind of after the fact. So it's been built by mistake, we've discovered it, and now we go through a process to allow it to remain. In this case, they made their application for development. The ramp wasn't shown in that application. They realized that their front door is a little higher than they were expecting, so they do need a ramp for the access for that. So they did submit a updated plan showing the ramp, which is the majority of which is on the town's property. We went out, did a site inspection and a review, and we, at the time, determined that as the planning department, we wouldn't recommend allowing for this particular encroachment or letting them build it like that, as there was definitely room on their property to the door that would be built facing to the west to put the ramp in. However, they've come back and asked again if they can have the ramp to the south of on the property on the town sidewalk, because it'll reduce their ability to put as many tables out on their patio as they'd like. At the time, we did tell them that, again, we wouldn't recommend it. Instead, an area that the planning department has it, we could work with them on, had to do with our sidewalk patios. So I do have the ability to give permits for sidewalk patios, so they could apply to have some tables out on the sidewalk if they wanted extra tables. They've still wanted us to come forward and present this to council. So we do have an encroachment policy. Our policy specifically says that we recognize that encroachments exist. So again, they're existing. Usually we don't grant them ahead of time and will be continued to be discovered, and that we established a policy to make sure that all the applications are handled in a consistent manner. And then in our actual procedure, we have a variety of things. So in this particular case, the CAO has recommended that we bring it to council. And then normally an investigation would be done with an encroachment, and we would do a background investigation that would determine whether the encroachment resulted in an error, no easement registration, whether the road plan right-of-way was maybe changed after the fact, because that happens specifically with older properties. A permit was issued and it was in the drawings and we didn't notice. So none of these things occurred in this particular application. And then the last portion that you should be aware of is that when we do have encroachments into our easements or right-of-ways, which this would be the road right-of-way, any structure that encroaches into an easement by less than 0.5 meters, so about 5 centimeters, doesn't require to enter into an official encroachment agreement. Other structures that don't require this are driveways, which cross over but do not run parallel. So if it's like perpendicular to the sidewalk, we wouldn't require an encroachment agreement for that. We don't require them for sidewalks connecting. And it does say special needs, ramps, elevators, fire accesses, etc. So again, this is all specific to when it was built in mistake or by error. In this particular case, they're asking us for permission. When we evaluated the application, had it been on there, we would have said, no, it's not on your property. You need to redesign it, so it is. And that is the information. And we will let you guys ask any questions you have.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How far over onto the sidewalk would it be covering exactly?
So, through to Monica or Councillor McLean, I don't have the exact number. They didn't show it to me on the drawing. The majority of it is on the town sidewalk. The sidewalk is fairly large there, and then part of the comments and conversation was is another property in town that has it. Again, it's been there for years. We wouldn't normally allow a new one to be built like that. And the other property that had one downtown was where the Cattleman's Chop House is now, and they did actually remove that when they renovated that building, and they moved theirs to the back.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did drive past this business, and it's hard for me to maybe visualize, again, because there is some concrete and then the sidewalk. So are they wanting to just build the ramp on the existing concrete and not touch the existing sidewalk?
Pardon me, you can see that it comes out and kind of comes up to the sidewalk. However, in that area, most of the concrete is actually our sidewalk. So it is wider than a standard sidewalk in that particular area, and all along the front there. It's the portion adjacent to their building is theirs, but there's only maybe 3 or 4 inches in front of the building, and then you're at the property line. It's not very much at all.
Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is from the building end, they're too high and they have to build a ramp down. So how much too high are they from the existing
They're
sidewalk?
about 13 inches higher than the grade, so they would need to mitigate that to the standards for accessibility. So the ramp would be designed to have the proper slope to get up to that.
So what they are asking is to slope it onto our sidewalk.
Uh,
I'm sorry,
no,
I'm a little confused. I
Yeah.
drove by there a few times and looking at the slope, and I'm not sure really.
they would build a proper ramp, like what was at the old credit union bank where you went up and then went in. It would be similar to that, not exactly like that, but that idea where you go up a ramp and then go in. If they built it on the west side, it would do the same thing. You would go up and then go in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Repfer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My voice is a little off. Has it come as a safety concern why we don't want to do it? Has that been brought up?
There is a little bit of a safety concern. Of course, we always want to make sure we're providing, and our buildings, especially new buildings, are providing good access for people with accessibility issues. In this case, it's more of a maintenance for our public works, and Chris could maybe speak a little bit more towards that.
So, safety is a minor issue, mostly with pedestrians who are walking along that sidewalk east-west. And while the drawing shows this sidewalk width, for a user of that, the full width from the building face on the property line and adjacent building faces on the property line feels like it's just a wide sidewalk. And so you could have pedestrians walking close to other buildings and then walking into the ramp without seeing it, but very minor. The real principle is, from a planning perspective, is we typically don't want people building things on other people's property. It's just not something that, which includes the town as an owner, along with the same principle, especially when their preferred option is to be on the south side of the building like you're seeing in the image. But they can build an appropriate ramp exiting the west door to that same space and contain that all on their property. While it's a preference, it's not the only option that they have. But certainly a property owner, any property owner, can permit someone to build something on their property, and the town can do that as well.
All right, thank
Just
you.
to follow up.
Sure, yeah.
We do have the patios on the sidewalk policy, and I have seen them in some businesses, and they have been thriving and doing very well. Like I seen at the parade, quite of them. So we do have that option, which is very beneficial, especially with their sidewalk. They would have an immense opportunity. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
I just wanted to point out for Councillor Bruin, so the ramp is going with the building, not straight out onto the sidewalk. So it kind of follows the length of the building at the front. It doesn't just go straight in, for clarification.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A comment first, and I'm prepared to make a motion after that. The comment I would make is that Development Authority initially approved the addition to that building. And it kind of puzzled me because it's out of whack with other buildings on that avenue, like it's sticking out like a sore thumb. That's my comment. But that's all I'm gonna say about it, because it's a done deal, right? So I'm ready to make a motion. Council
right.
directs administration not to grant the request for the ramp encroachment.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin? Question or comment also?
More of a comment, I guess. So this encroachment, this ramp coming down, it is the builder's responsibility for snow removal and whatnot. So when we say it's going to affect public works and cleaning that, I don't really understand why it'll affect us so much, except for, like Mr. Tebow said, when people are walking, they're all of a sudden going to have a ramp there. But to me, it's not a big deal. It's a mistake on the developer's part, and to me, the ramp will not really bother anyone.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think also I agree with Councillor Bruin. If we can allow tables out there, I don't foresee a problem with there being a ramp, other than it's being more of a permanent structure. But driving down that avenue, there's other businesses right up to the sidewalk, even though this one's larger. So I feel that, I don't see why we couldn't accommodate this request, as long as it's not encroaching the sidewalk, that normal sidewalk.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin. Okay, all right. All right, just to, for clarification, it's just not real clear on exactly how far that is out onto the town property by the drawings there.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. So in this particular case, the setbacks for all of our commercial district is 0. You can go right to the lot line. So the buildings were built over different periods. This one was built a little further back, which is why they had the room to put the addition at the front and then have the patio area to the side. But unfortunately, in the drawings they sent me, there weren't any dimensions, so I can't tell exactly how far out it does encroach at this time. And they would have to build it to building code standards for accessible ramps. There's code standards they would have to meet.
Okay, so I'm just, like, would it be a fifth of the sidewalk width there, like on town property?
No,
Or?
it's more like a fifth of their property and 4/5 on the, like, it's, the majority of it is on the
4/5 on the town.
on the town's property.
So as you said, it's a wide sidewalk, so would that take you like half that sidewalk space roughly, or?
They'll be approximately 4 feet off the front of their
4
building
feet.
and on town property.
Okay. All right, and you're virtually saying that there's other scenarios with the patio allotments.
Yes, with the patio allotments, like Councillor Sorensen had indicated, the difference is one is a permanent and the
Correct,
other is
yeah.
temporary, so they can come and move, and if they are causing a problem, they can be moved. We do get the
Okay.
chance to reevaluate it each season. There are other businesses downtown that have used it, so we can see where it works well. When it doesn't work well, we can make adjustments. We do ensure that they get insurance when we have them do those patio tables and things like that, or sidewalk sales. And so
Right,
it
yeah.
just comes down to what you guys feel is appropriate.
It's too bad we're at where we're at because of some error by contractor scenario, I guess, but Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just comparing this to a building on 47th where we extending their walkway out and we put wheelchair access on one side. I own property on 48th Avenue that goes right up to the sidewalk. There's a step in, I believe it's not 13 inches, but it's a step in. Personally, myself, I don't have a problem with this and I couldn't support the motion we've made.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Bruin, just with that example, just so everybody is aware, with an existing building where you didn't have an opportunity to put a proper ramp in, we would look at that differently in the planning department as well. Because if you need to meet current requirements and you have to put the ramp in, but you don't have the space, then it's always a little different. It's a little apples and oranges almost at this point.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sorensen?
I guess I would just ask for more information as to how much it's actually gonna encroach on the town's property, and actually if it's gonna encroach on this actual sidewalk, or if it's just gonna be, you know, like Councillor Bruin suggested, just up to the property line.
So the actual sidewalk is a perceptional, I would say. So we don't have a specific width of the sidewalk, and it's not delineated by paint or elevation differences to the choices that we've made to take the one section of concrete that we're calling sidewalk, or referring to as sidewalk, and then this piece of sidewalk beside it that abuts between that piece of concrete and the front of a business. To a pedestrian, I would suggest it all feels like a sidewalk, and they can walk wherever they want between the building and the curb. This will stick out about 4 feet. When we clean the town property with machinery, we will be working around this. I'm not sure what we do if we damage it. Probably the same if council permits the use, then we will treat it similarly if we damage the face of a building with a piece of our equipment while we're carrying out functions. So But there's the ability for people to walk past if there was this ramp was permitted, there is still 5 feet of space between this ramp approximately and the curb and lampposts and such that people can effectively walk past the front of this building. So it's not like this would totally impede them. They would just have to work around it, similar to planters and other things that we do have in the visual pathway that pedestrians use.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
I'm satisfied with that answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Everett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again with my voice. I know it's kind of a new build. It's not really like adding to an existing. However, our downtown is quite old, and I'm sure they're trying to maximize the most they can. And as a, having a small business downtown, I would hate 4 feet to slow down my plans of, making a restaurant and doing well. So I'm between a rock and a hard place with this because I want development, and I know it's a big sidewalk going to the point that if we have patios, then you can walk by patios. Maybe we can walk by ramps. I'm not trying to set a standard, but maybe they're in a spot where we can help.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, defeated. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does that mean the CEO has the authority to approve or not approve?
Mr. Thibault.
I see everyone's looking at me. In the moment, I have to think about it. I can't answer that question in the moment. What we've agreed to is not to do that, but we haven't actually approved a ramp in my estimation either. So I don't know if someone wanted to make an alternative motion, but with lack of that, I actually don't know if planning has enough direction to say, yes, it can happen, or no, it can't, unless Selena can answer that for me.
I think, yeah, if somebody, because I did do the alternative where council could approve it, so I think an alternative motion could be made. I don't know how that would work. Brittany?
Yeah, it's,
No?
I
Okay.
think that's like anything else. Anything else that's defeated, if it's another alternate option, then that can happen. Councillor Renford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In previous talk with council, I know that we've always wanted to not slow down people developing and stuff like that. I do think, I think everybody would have liked a little bit more how far it goes in. So I'm wondering if we can slow it down and get a little bit more information before we yes or no it. So that's kind of where I'm saying, if my motion is to direct, I'd like to make a motion to direct administration to get a little bit more information from the developer. Right, is that? Yeah. One sec. I don't want to put it through without a little bit more, so, I'm not willing to make a motion, I guess, to accept it, right? But I would just like some more information.
All right, Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what we need is a little more information on this before we make a motion. I'd like to see a better drawing of how they would encroach the sidewalk, and being that it's such a wide sidewalk, I think there is an alternative that we could probably work with. So my motion would be that administration bring us back an alternative so that they may encroach the sidewalk, but yet being safe for pedestrian traffic.
All right. Mr. Thibault?
So put some quick thought into it and a discussion with you've made a motion. Technically speaking, things can't come back for 6 months. That discussion or an alternative motion should have been a friendly amendment or some type of discussion before things were voted on. So I'm saying that we're very likely in a spot where we've made a motion and another motion isn't proper to make at this point in time, so it would need to wait. That's the advice I have in this moment.
Would that then put this project on hold?
It would make it so the ramp can't happen at this point in time, yes, because we don't have the authority to, we weren't given the approval to go ahead and say yes, to the best of my knowledge. Again, I can still take it away, but at this moment in time, the rules would suggest we've gone through the motions, we've voted on them, and it's complete. It's a finished item.
Councillor Sorensen?
I was just gonna say that Councillor Renford made a motion first and then Councillor Bruin, so there's two motions on the table, but.
Yeah, there is. You know, and that's right. So now, just to clarify again, it's and maybe you can help me out with this, Councillor Becker. And I believe we've done some of this in the past when something didn't fly and there was other alternatives. An alternative could have been made it wasn't in this case. But Councillor Becker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a reason I asked the question, because this is a bit of a touchy subject. The bylaw states it's dead for 6 months unless 3/5 of council votes to proceed with an alternative. So, if someone wants to make a motion to proceed with an alternative, not which alternative, but an alternative, you get four out of the 7, or 5 out of the 7 voting for, not 4, 5 out of the 7, and you proceed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Firth?
I was just going to say exactly what Councillor Beckering just said.
Okay. So we still have two motions on the table, technically. No, they were made. I know that, but I'm just saying, so typically when that happens, if that's not proper, then you should be withdrawing your motion. But, so you need, if that's your wishes, you need to say that.
Yep, I would like to rescind my motion.
Just withdraw.
Withdraw.
Withdraw. All right. Thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I'll withdraw my motion as well.
All right. Thank you. So we're back to square one. Councillor Renfrey, that's another question, or?
I would like to make a motion, thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
to, like, have the three, and to suggest an alternative. I would like to suggest an
address no-
alternative to
To address an alternative motion?
the motion, yes.
All right. Very well. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? So that doesn't fly. All right. And Councillor Bruin, you, okay, thank you. All right, so just for information purpose, more so we're all clear, and or anyone chiming in here, and our business owners in particular, the next steps are what?
We would need to wait for 6 months to come back and have the discussion again. Or yes, they have an option to put it on their property.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. Moving on. Item 7.5, funding request, Halo Air Ambulance requests, Mr. Tebow.
So just me speaking to this one. Halo had sent in a request. They're doing a fundraiser ball game on the 21st of September, organized with the Municipal District of Tabor Regional Fire Service. And they had just sent in this request for a possible donation or a sponsorship for the event. Noted that council has about $5,400 left available in their discretionary fund with, 4 months left of the year. So over to council.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where are they holding this tournament?
I believe it's at Ken McDonald
So-
Park. Correct.
I didn't read that there anywhere.
I think that is where it's being held, yeah.
I
Okay,
think,
so, so we can, do in lieu of a donation, provide the diamonds free of charge, or is there that alternative, or?
Oh, yeah, council can make any motion you wish. If that's not one of the listed alternatives, you can certainly.
I
make a
don't
motion.
see where it's being held, is,
It is Ken McDonald Park. Ball diamonds.
okay.
Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For council information, at the last council meeting, we made a motion, passed a motion to support STARS for $1 per capita per year, which is about $9,000. Now, we are affected way more by STARS as a town than we are by Halo. Halo pretty well stops on the edge of town, I think, pretty well. So my suggestion would be that we support Halo, because it's a very worthwhile cause, of course, but not to the same extent as we support STARS.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Just a thought out there, and, we supported, STARS to a sum of about 9,000, I believe. Halo, Chief Monshaw would be able to answer this probably better than, he'd have more information than any of us probably would, where their boundaries are. I do believe we have to support them somewhat, and I'd be willing perhaps $4,000 plus the baseball diamond, something, they support the citizens in the community of Tabor, not our town of Tabor boundaries, but the whole area of Tabor, so it would be remiss if we didn't support them somehow.
All right, so just to clarify the motion, Councillor Brown?
There's no motion, just discussion.
Oh, you're, okay, all right, not put in the form of a motion just yet. Councillor Firth?
I agree that Halo Air Ambulance is a worthwhile cause, and I would like to contribute somehow. But I would say either a donation or a fee waiver. I couldn't support both.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
Maybe if Chief Munshaw can come up and just tell us a little bit about the event? Is it from the MD? Oh, sorry. I thought you were having more information. But again, I would just support one or the other.
All right, thank you. I guess just for clarification, Chief Munso, I think there is some overlap, is there not, with Halo? They don't just stop at the boundary east end of Tabor, correct? If there's a need, there has been some overlap. Is that not accurate?
Share what you think you can share, Mr. Munshaw.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, so Halo Air Ambulance is a joint partnership with STARS Air Ambulance. Obviously, it's directed through STARS, and it does support the majority of the area through the southeast of our province. We are on the cusp, but we do have Halo come into our region at times, especially with patients, or taking out of patients whenever STARS is not available, and they are dispatched then through STARS. For this particular event, it is being initially set up by the MD Regional Fire Department, as they're the ones that primarily work with the Halo. It is being done at Ken McDonald Sports Field on the 21st, and is grouping together with all emergency service agencies. Police, ambulance, fire are all welcome. TPS is included, Tabor Fire is included. So we are grouping together. Halo will be at that location and landing the ambulance there, and any support, I think, at any time would be greatly appreciated, including ball diamond fee.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify, I'm playing. Chief Abella is also either playing or umpiring or both. There you go. So, all right, Councillor Renfrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully it becomes an annual event, right? Like the Tabor Charity Auction, and it can build. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that the administration waives any fees of rental or camping in regards to hosting the tournament for the MDT Regional Fire Department.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brecken.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we have that read back? Not talk back, read back.
I guess, Mr. Tebow, we just don't know what that figure is, eh? Roundabout even?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have that answer. I wouldn't be
yeah.
able to get you that on the spot. I don't know what that number is. It's not going to exceed, the council discretionary fund or anything like that, but I actually don't know what that number would be, and probably can't get it for you just like this.
Right, yeah. All right, thank you, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd perhaps like to make a friendly amendment, because I don't want to see this voted down, and we have to look at it in 6 months from now. That council makes a one-time donation of $4,000 to the Halo Fund to come from the councilor's discretionary fund.
Councilor Renford.
Friendly amendment.
Thank you for that amendment. I kind of just want to either keep it donation or.
That would be with our donation of the property or the rental, all inclusive, $4,000 donation.
Councilor Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, that is not a friendly amendment. That is a different motion altogether.
don't want to throw out these motions.
So therefore,
It
let's
doesn't
think of a
seem.
mind, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go with the motion of, I would like to make, thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that administration. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, just
so
so
you
that,
can-
because
you can-
it hadn't been,
No.
Council Beckman kind of wanted me to be reset. Okay. I think that's all it is.
So if you want to withdraw that and start again, you can certainly do
Yeah,
that.
I guess I'll withdraw my motion.
All right.
I would like to make a motion of a $2,000 donation to Halo to support their ball tournament. One time.
All right, thank you. Councilor Firth?
I was going to suggest a friendly amendment, but then Councillor Renfort withdrew his motion. And I would just like to suggest that we just need to say where the funds are coming from.
The discretionary fund, thank you.
Okay, correct. And just to confirm, Councilor Bruin, yours wasn't actual motion, so you'd have to withdraw that
No, I was a
portion.
friendly amendment.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't have to.
So,
He didn't accept it, no.
you're okay with that? We're good with that? Okay. All
I'd
right.
like to make a friendly amendment. He increases it to 4,000. I won't.
All right. We do have a motion on the table. Councilor Renford? Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to 7.6 WTP filter actuator. Mr. Tebow.
I will get Mr. Egan to come up and speak to this item.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
So in front of you today is a request for decision related to the water treatment plant. In that plant, there are 4 filters that we use to part of the purification process when we bring raw water into the plant and produce potable water. Each of those filters has a number of valves, and on those valves are actuators which do 2 things. They receive signals from our control systems, and then they literally power the valve open or closed at a certain rate that the system allows the system to work effectively and efficiently. Typically, we've replaced those valves since they're all at end of life. We've done 2 of the 4 filters completely. However, recently in the summertime, we had one of the actuators on filter 2 fail. Instead, and finding parts for it has been pretty much impossible because they're at end of life. So this, I'll call it a premature failure, has caused us to shut that particular filter off. And what we would seek from council is permission to replace that actuator with the new versions of actuators that we're moving to, and do it this year in the 2024 year so that we can bring that filter back online and have that capacity available in case we need it.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prepare to make a motion.
Very well.
The council approves the project budget not to exceed $20,000 to replace a failed actuator on WTP filter number 2 and fund the project from capital reserves.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. So we've replaced one actuator already. Two.
1 and 3.
So we've replaced all the actuators on filters 1 and 3. We've replaced none of the actuators on filter 2. One of those actuators has failed, and this proposes to replace that one failed actuator.
So the $20,000, that's what it costs just to replace the actuator?
Yes.
It seems like we don't see a estimated cost of what it costs to replace the actuator, just we gave you not to exceed 20,000. So we must have a price on what one new actuator valve costs?
We have a budget of the actuator valve, the actuator itself, and then we don't have a budget on the installation costs that we would do that time and material with one of our standard equipment supplier or labor suppliers that we use for the plant. So we proposed a budget of 20,000.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you have a motion on the table? Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.7, information for council. Mr. Tebow.
So a few information items. One of the information items is speaking to the flagpoles that were moved by Mayor Prokop out of the Trout Pond. That did get sent to the rec board. The rec board met on September the 5th. The rec board does have a recommendation coming back to council. I don't know all the details of that particular meeting. I know that Councillor Sorensen was there, but I don't know if I can't speak to every single thing that happened there. And if Councillor Sorensen could speak to something, then that might be helpful. But there will be something coming back to council on that information item.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Sure, I can share that there was some discussion and that the MD also would maybe like the opportunity to fly their flag also. And so there was a recommendation that depending on the discussion at their next meeting, if they would like to also have their flag there and if council's willing to have that. So I'm not sure what the process is, but that was the conversation, is the MD might want to also fly their flag there.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow.
Did you need more on that, or just move on to the next information?
No, I just
Yep.
wondered, like I said, we talked about 3 initially, 3 flagpoles. So
Yep.
we do fly the MD flag here as well. So I think that's appropriate for sure.
Yeah, so that will go to the MD and then it'll make its way back to
Right.
us.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sorensen as well. All right.
Information item number 2. So we had a representative, Megan Brennan, go up to the Jasper wildfire. There was a very comprehensive report in council's package, and I would like it if Megan would come up and just provide a little bit of the flavor of what was happening up there and her role in that. And it was some very good representation that took place up there. So I'd like to thank Megan prior to, and Megan, if you could give us a little summary, please.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Brennan.
Thank you. I couldn't find the words in 15 pages to tell you what Jasper was like. I won't be able to tell you now. But what I can tell you is I meant what I said in the document when I said this is the bar to which all future emergencies will now be held. I have never seen anything like that again, or before. I hope that I never see something like that again. And yet it was the greatest honor I've yet to receive. Jasper will rebuild. They will be fine, despite this trauma, despite these scars, because of the efforts of their emergency personnel. I saw the very best of humanity there. I saw people from all over Canada. Thank goodness that Parks Canada was part of Unified Command. They called on resources from every corner of this country to come and answer the call for help. That is extraordinary. And yes, people will say that it's because it's a national park, but it was so much more than that. 30% of Jasper's structures are gone, most of those being homes. And Jasper was already dealing with a housing crisis, so that's compounded. But the small, and I mean very small part that I served in the Unified Command Incident Command Post was extraordinary. And it's thanks to the South Zone All Hazards Management Incident Team that I'm allowed to go to these deployments, and it's thanks to the town of Tabor for the grace in letting me go. I was gone for 14 days, and that was 14 days that the town of Tabor didn't have their communications coordinator to serve them. So it's a great deal of sacrifice on a lot of parts, no more so than the firefighters, and especially the family of Morgan Kitchen, who was lost to that fire. So we cannot say it's one of the safest fires in Canada, because it's not. It came at a great cost. And I will say that the municipality of Jasper, Parks Canada, the Incident Command Team, and specifically Mayor Richard Ireland, instilled in me a faith in public service that has been lost. Because what I saw there in their worst possible moment was the best of humanity. Never once did they worry about their position or their or what people were going to say about them, or worried about what somebody was going to say in the roast and toast or anything like that. They were worried about making sure people were safe, making sure the boots on the ground stayed alive, made sure that we were all cared for no matter where we came from, and made sure that everyone's mental health came out of this in, if not, if bruised, then at least partially intact. It was extraordinary. I can't tell you very much of what happened in there because the after action reports will be coming in a few months' time and probably next year. But I can tell you it was extraordinary. I don't think I'll ever see anything like that again. At our peak, the information officer team was 9 people. That demonstrates how much communications was required out of there. And that is the largest deployment I've ever seen. In Drayton Valley, there were 4 of us, and it wasn't enough. 9 still wasn't enough. And each of us were doing something very different. You'll see in the report there was one person specifically handling media. There was one person specifically and only updating politicians every hour on the hour on highlights, facts, you name it. They were informing different aides. It was incredible. But it could not have been done without unified command and everybody meeting the mark. It was powerful and it was profound, and it is what all emergencies will be held to. And if all municipalities, ours included, but if all municipalities don't take their lessons from Jasper and what comes out of that after action report, then shame on all municipalities, and the public will not forget, nor will they forgive that. But all that being said, that sounds very foreboding. What happened in Jasper is not rare, but the extraordinary community I got to see was rare. And I thank the town of Tabor for allowing me to be a part of that for 14 days.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Megan, for your many efforts and your report. Any questions for Megan whatsoever? Councillor Firth?
Not a question, just a comment. I found your report very moving. And I want to thank you for what you did for Jasper and for representing our community so well.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you again so much, Megan. All right, Mr. Thibault?
While Megan was gone for 14 days, I know there was texting happening in the background, so she didn't leave us in the lurch. She was actually helping us out on whatever off hours she had going on. So again, thanks for that. Item number 3 speaks to a standing item where Councillor Sorensen had asked about a procurement process. And so I believe that Mr. Orwa and Megan Shishlinsky was going to come up and just do a little run through of our procurement process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tibble. So I think the question was, do we have a procurement policy? And secondly, does it work? How does it work? And I want to convince council that we have a very robust procurement policy. And I'll just leave it at that so that our procurement specialist can walk you through. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Well, just to elaborate too, it's not just if it works and how it works, but how we can share this with our community and perhaps have more local businesses have the knowledge of the procurement.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
As you will see on this, I have linked the procurement policy and procedure, which is on our website, could be found on our website for anybody that ever has any questions. It is very user-friendly, very easy to read. And then we'll go to the second page, it's the local preference. So based on trade agreements, we cannot just award to local. As much as that would help the local businesses, we can't do that. So the highlighted there is right out of our policy. So we do state that if we can, we will support local, but outside of trade agreements. And then the next one is our at a glance. So this is straight out of our policy as well. It gives very good understanding of all the thresholds. So after the project has actually been awarded, it's outside of the town of Tabor's hands on who each company subcontracts to. So if a prime contractor takes over the project, it's up to that prime contractor to sub it out. So the town doesn't actually have say on who is the subs. And then the next ones are just more in depth of each of the thresholds. So the goods and services up to 5,000, exactly that. And then just broken down on how it needs to be, whether or not it needs to go out for competitive bid or if it's just quotes or what it may be. So it goes all the way. And we do have construction and goods and services broken out because that's the way that the trade agreements have it broken out. So we're following trade agreements, the New West Partnership Trade Agreement to a T on how our policy reads. And then I do have a really good, if you keep going down, sorry. This is what I follow. I have this on my bulletin board because I'm always looking at it. So we are part of the MASH sector. So again, what I said about the New West Partnership Trade Agreement, that's our basic, we have to follow that one. So we have our 75 and 200,000 for goods, services, and construction. So the other ones will be met based on the New West Partnership Trade Agreement that we follow. So there are some exceptions, and that comes to when we deal with CNU or the RMA, Alberta municipalities, all those trade agreements that are the business trade agreements that we're a part of. So we can piggyback off of theirs that they've already put out for competitive bid, just like we do with a lot of equipment purchases and stuff like that. So the work has already been done for us on those ones, so we can just piggyback off of those ones. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Megan. Any questions whatsoever? Councillor Sorensen.
I just want to thank you for this information because, yeah, it's a lot, as you can tell. And I just want to see how we can share this and just if businesses do have trouble logging into the bidding system or getting on there, if you can just share your information and how they can get more help. I'm not sure if you have access to that or not.
Yeah, I should have mentioned also, so when we did go to our bids and tenders system, we used to just post every sort of advertisement on our website. So anybody that was subscribed to that page got an email directly to them of this is the next step, we're going to move to bids and tenders, here's step by step. It's very user friendly, I would say, for me anyways, but I think for the most of the public it would be very user friendly. But of course, if they ever have any questions, all my information's on the website as well, or they can reach out to bids and tenders support.
Great. Yeah. I thank administration for sharing this and with the public, and I hope that our local businesses have success in bidding for jobs. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, on to standing item council requests. Mr. Tebow?
Okay, item number 1 that is from dated back in February will be answered at our next meeting, Councillor Firth. So we have almost all the data and we'll be able to present that to you at the next meeting. I know you are. Councillor Sorensen, we just did the report on the procurement program for Resolution 245. 266 is going to take us a little longer, Councillor Sorensen, so we will come back to that. Stays in progress. In progress, we still also have the golf course path. There's one more factor, a bit of information that we need to verify before we come back and provide that, but we're pretty sure that we have the answer to that one. That'll remain in progress for now. Councillor Bruin, we've had no response back from our developer at this point in time for 43rd, so we are still in progress on that, and we have made multiple attempts, and we'll continue to do that. And last one is the flags for Mayor Prokop, Resolution 269, which we talked about, and will make its way back in one way, shape, or form after the MD discusses. So, back over to council if there's anything further to add, discuss, or ask questions about.
All right, thank you. Any new standing item council requests? Quiet on the Western Front. All right, I do have one item. I just wondered about the asphalt and or concrete installation. I know we're paying out a lot of money every year for that purpose and going to some big tenders as a result, and that's definitely needed, but and or the practicality of the town handling that more than we have been, if that's at all possible. So look forward to any other comments fellow councillors may have. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. What are you asking? Are you asking whether we do it ourselves?
Correct, yeah.
I mean,
More
install or-
about, correct, yes. Yeah.
I'm opposed to it.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor McLean?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Do you think that it would save us money by doing it in-house?
I believe it will. I know we've seen in the past when we did a trail portion down to the MD Park. The town did because we had an extremely high, low tender, and lowest tender rather, and they did it for about a third, from about $85,000 down to $30,000 that we did ourselves. So we are capable to do a certain amount. We don't have all the necessary equipment. Some, in that case, I believe had to be rented, if anybody recalls that specifically. But it's, you know, at the very least, just to explore that. I have no idea what kind of costs are involved with that. Councillor Sorensen?
I guess we could compare for a couple projects, but I'm to the belief that contracting things out tend to be perhaps maybe cheaper. So I'm not sure.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I said I'm opposed to it is because I think we're treading on administrative matters here. I think administration is duty bound to provide council with information, whether we do it ourselves or get a contractor to do it. I think they have the knowledge and the wisdom to give us the proper advice regarding that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow, I know we did have a brief discussion about this, so that's kind of what was suggested to go this route. That's why I asked a little while back, and this was kind of the suggestion through Mr. Tebow, so that's kind of where we're at today. Mr. Tebow?
Yeah, so the discussion came forward to potentially explore those options. Administration is not opposed to exploring those options, and I wouldn't venture a guess as to, I know it's expensive to have your own stuff, right? So we don't have an asphalt plant. We would never have an asphalt plant, but we may have equipment and labor, and I don't know what that might look like. So if the ask was to explore or do some kind of a cost comparative analysis between contracting out and maybe owning some of the equipment and doing some of the labor ourselves, it's definitely possible that administration could look into that, but that's from an exploration perspective is what we were talking about.
That's basically what I got for the most part. If I do have a crafted motion in place, if anybody wants to adjust that or hear that accordingly. Just ask that council directs administration to investigate the possibility of the town of Tabor to be installation capable of asphalt and or concrete replacement and report back to council with approximate costs, requirements, and feasibility. All right, all right. Councilor Bruin, sure.
Just discussion on that. We do now presently do some concrete work. I think like if we need to replace portions of sidewalk, the town does it. The asphalt is a whole different ballgame, I think, by having to make asphalt. We don't have the capability of doing that, so don't really know if I'd support this motion such as it's worded. I'd like us to do as much concrete work as we can do and not interfere with other work we have planned, but it's kind of a tough one for me to support.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. No other stand item council requests? All right. We've got 10 minutes for a delegation, so we can move into. Yeah. Yeah, we can go into closed session for the 10 minutes before our actual delegations are up for 5 o'clock.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Moving to closed session. Councilor Bertrand, thank you. All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. All right, if we could have a motion to move back into open session, please. Councillor McLean, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to our delegations, item 8.1, delegation Taber and District Housing. Mr. Tebow.
I will have Mr. Jensen come forward and speak to the Cherry and Main. As council recalls, there was some property provided to the Cherry and Main project at one point in time. Funding resources did not come through for that particular initiative. And so now the ask will be back in front of council, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Jensen.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Welcome. There you go.
Your Worship, Council, Administration, thanks for the opportunity to present you our request for land upon which we could build Cherry and Main affordable project. I'm not sure if you've seen the slides, but previously we had lots 18 through 30 allocated to TDHF, so we could make application for grant funding. Eventual construction was the hope in the downtown area of Taber. We made application twice to the Affordable Housing Partnership Program, which is a Government of Alberta program, and once through Rapid Housing Initiative with Canada Mortgage and Housing from fall of 2022 to spring of 2024. We'd be celebrating, so obviously we were unsuccessful. But we set out this past spring trying to develop a new design, maybe a little more economical. And we were able to complete an exercise with Bergen and Associates from Coldell. They actually had a project that was approved in Lethbridge through the Aboriginal Housing Society. And they actually had a housing unit that was approximately the same size we were looking at. And ironically, this design has a more compact footprint. And as a result, we can actually achieve a few more units, have more off-street parking, and actually still fit into the remaining land on that block. This new design will have 22 affordable units, 15 one-bedroom, 7 studio, 11 near-market units, which are 7 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom. 7 of the one-bedroom units are on the main floor and are handicap accessible. There's 50 off-street parking stalls, 8 of which are handicap parking. And there's actually 1,500 square feet or so for office space proposed for TDHF. And we've contemplated doing that because our rent can help pay off the mortgage, and as well, we can be on site for support services when necessary. We've anticipated that the project has construction costs of $8.1 million. Land was previously estimated at $443,000, which brings the total project to $8.55 million. It's been a while since I've been in front of you, but that's right around $260,000 a unit. We were considerably higher than that with the previous design. So we'd had some feedback from the provincial government that they wanted to see pricing a little bit lower. So our goal is to apply for CMHC cooperative housing funding. We're on a bit of a tight deadline, so we'll see if we can make it, but because it closes September 15th, but they've already indicated there will be a winter-spring session. The Alberta Affordable Housing Partnership Program has yet to be announced for this fall, but all year they've been saying that it's going to be in fall. The hard part for these programs is you have to have land. If you don't have land, you don't apply. So there really is no point making an application without a property to tie to. Our hope is that Town Council continues to recognize the dire situation for housing in the community, particularly around affordable housing. While there are housing projects being built, which is great, they're really not affordable. The advertised rates for these new constructions are $1,800 for a 2-bedroom. That's before utilities. That's not affordable to individuals that are working at minimum wage or working less than full-time hours. In fact, I did the math. It's not affordable for 2 people working full-time. You'll pay more than 30% of your income to housing if that's what you're paying. The issue for us is there is funding amounts, and the amounts seem to be increasing, But during the last application cycle for the Affordable Housing Partnership, there were over $600 million of projects. There was $56 million of funding. So even if you have a great project, it takes time to get approved. So I would, request that you understand and acknowledge that process, and hope that you would consider again providing land for the project at 54th Street and 47th Avenue, and also allow for some time for a number of application cycles that we can work through. That's likely what it will take to be successful. So unfortunately, the days of approvals or instant approvals are long gone. I think we're in the same sort of cycle when you guys need a major infrastructure upgrade. You plan it, but you hope in the next 5 years to a decade, you get the money to be able to do it. I'm hopeful we're not that far out, but years would not be out of consideration. That's pretty much my presentation. The only other comment I would make is that it should be noted that the Clearview Lodge project would be funded out of the same pool of money. It's considered affordable housing. So it's probably not likely that, or it's likely that funding approvals are going to take some time. They really liked the fact that we had buy-in from the municipalities, but they also simply said it's a numbers game. They approved $56 million. I believe it's 120 supposed to happen this year, but also people are generating more projects. So, any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your presentation. Very informational. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Jansen. So I understand the challenge after sitting on your board, but I would just like to help you understand our challenge as well. So while I understand what a worthwhile project this is, and that we are, yes, short of housing and very short of affordable housing, we're the stewards of land of the town of Taber. And so is it responsible for us to hold on to a piece of property indefinitely when we're not sure what the timeline or if there's any guarantee of the project moving forward? I mean, in a perfect world, the approval would come through, you'd have the land, the project would be built. But we need to weigh that, right? I mean, will there be land somewhere? Likely, yes. But will it be this one? I don't know that we can say for certain that there will be. So.
Well, I think that was the primary purpose of coming today, was to get clarity. Because, we made several applications without having land available. I had to sign an attestation that we had land available. So if land is not available, clarity on that is very helpful. So I understand that things change, but actually knowing that things have changed would be really helpful to know.
And I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying that the land is not available. I'm just saying that it'd be really helpful from my perspective if we had a clearer timeline of, and I know that that's not something that you can necessarily provide or that anyone can, but it's tough to just have an open-ended and just to be holding on to it indefinitely.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jansen, you initially, in your presentation, said that we had approved lots 18 to 30, if I heard you correctly.
That's correct.
Now you're asking from 18 to 28 because your footprint's that much smaller, correct?
Right. Plus, lot 30 is not available anymore.
Oh, sold.
You guys sold it.
Oh, way to go, eh, guys?
And you were trying to sell all the other property for the last year.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, thank you for your presentation, sir.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to agree with Council Firth, although I know that corner that you're being painted into, it's just horrendous, right? But at the same time, there is a commitment on the part of the council of the town of Taber to look after the best interest and all that stuff. We all know that. I would suggest to you that what do you think about a 2-year? What do you think about 2 years?
I do get that it can't be open-ended and indefinite. I think if we can't get it in 2 years, then I don't know when we necessarily will. But you know, it's really hard to know. I think the fact that we've reduced the cost of it by almost 40% should be helpful. I think probably the most important thing is to make sure that, you know, the government understands that there's alignment of, you know, the municipality, the housing, the surrounding municipalities. I think without that, then we run into challenges with, you know, we give them an easy out, and I know who's standing behind me, so I don't want to make it easy for other jurisdictions to be chosen for housing. I think it's great that stuff is being built. That is good. Stuff is coming online in town. But the reality is, I guess I want to advocate for my clients and certainly know when we designed this, the range of need was expressed in the needs assessment of 30 to 120. We've always built for the lower end. I can tell you with certainty that when I do the needs assessment again this fall, I expect we'll be at the high end of people that could use this form of housing.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jansen, I sympathize with you because the town council has committed some land to you. And, you know, I think we should honor that, especially when you have come to us with a lower footprint and, you know, like a more affordable perhaps project, and perhaps it would be even more attainable then for you to get the funding. You know, best case scenario. I do agree it can't be a commitment that's, you know, forever. So I can appreciate that there's a timeline. I hope that you would follow it and hopefully make the September 15th deadline, and if not, the next deadline, just to show your commitment again with moving forward on this project, and hopefully all the stars align and this project can be put forward. I do know that there's a huge need in our community for this, and I just hope that and wish you success with this project.
I can tell you, and I think Dan can back this up, that it was a somewhat contentious discussion at our table. The government asks us to prioritize our projects. And so we have Clearview Lodge as a project, and we have Cherry and Main. And last year, because we wanted to ride the wind of the Clearview Lodge project, we put that first. At this meeting, I was kind of surprised, but the argument that won the day was that we have a lodge. Yes, we would like to update it, but we do actually have a lodge. We do not have any affordable housing. So the goal would be that we would move forward. So when we expressed our priority in our 2025 budget, we've actually said Cherry and Main is our 1A and Clearview Lodge is our 1B. So we definitely have a commitment at the board level and from administration. Not that I would put any less effort into trying to get Clearview Lodge underway, but certainly there's lots of desire to get some amount of affordable housing in the community.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rufford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was privately in a CMHC like funding, and I know they've got money to give. They're going to give money. Housing's in need. The private sector is pushing housing right now, so we're going to get more housing. It's going to happen, but to not allow Taber District Housing any land when they can go out and maybe get something for us, right, would be a detriment to just have not to give that a try and just lean on private. Private is, we're seeing it in the Meadows. Private isn't going to be affordable. The private people doing it. There's got to be some public in this, and us helping Taber District Housing and us helping our, lower income to just say no because, we can sell the land at a better price, and then somebody builds an apartment building and does it for $2,500 a month. It's no help. So I know housing is there, so I am in full support that we set aside some land with a finite time a bit. I'm for that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tim, for your presentation. We definitely need to get something going on this. Like, this is coming into my 12th year as council, and we've been talking about it since year one. I'm really starting to think this isn't the right location for it, being that the value of this land. But, you know, we have other land up by Meadows, areas like that, that perhaps would be more fitting for this project. So I think the town has to give something to this with the land, but maybe we have to reevaluate where we want it. That's my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jansen, I think Tabor District Housing has put a lot of resources into the planning of this building at the location. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did it with your money, but we did it on your direction where to put it. Now, of course, previous councils, previous administration, I think at the time the thought was that they wanted to change the look of the downtown. They wanted a different feel. Residential would achieve that. I think, you know, the kind of the two bookends were our building and the Chamber of Commerce building, which, you know, we still see dirt on the ground in both spots, which is, I think, frustrating for everybody. But I think the real win was many of these clients, their next biggest expense would be a vehicle. So if you can put them in a spot where they can walk to most of their services, that's a win. And I think that might be a bit of the concern around maybe going Meadows. Yet, you know, I think there's some land at Ernest Meyer Park, and now with some of the additional commercial space being built there, maybe they don't have to cross the highway to get to what I think is it No Frills and Shoppers and Dollarama and Walmart. So, you know, there's significant development on that side of the highway. But indeed, we designed the property for that location. And I would tell you next time, if we can, let's find something that's square. But it's pretty hard, and maybe not east-west, because I think everyone would like either morning sun or evening sun. If you have a building that runs east-west, if you have a south unit, you get all the sun. If you get a north unit, well, maybe you like it dark.
Can I
But-
just ask one
Sure,
more
yeah.
question? If we were to change the location and offer you a different parcel of land, would that put a hold on your application?
Well, yeah, we need to identify specific properties. So until that was settled, and then to make sure that the footprint and the parking and the services are there, that would take some time. So, and the worst part is there's cost. You're probably not aware, Carly and Dan are aware, our social housing budget, we're not allowed to keep reserves. So if we actually make money, we have to either spend it or we give it back to the government. So we spend it. We try to keep our buildings in good shape. But what it means is like $25,000 for the social housing side is almost insurmountable for our budget. And with talking, you know, Class B costing, site assessments, like it's easy to drop $100,000 into a project, and that's not even design. So that would become a bit of a barrier. We designed this piece of housing, this building, for a very specific lot. So maybe it fits onto another lot somewhere. It could, but you'd have to spend the time to make sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am in support of this project. I think it's a great thing that Tabor definitely needs because it's a huge lack. And so I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that council approves the allocation of lots 18 to 28, Block 5, Plan 5638L, to be reserved until the results of the 2025 CMHC grant funding application for the Cherry and Main Affordable Housing Project, contingent on the 1/3 of the project cost being provided from the CMHC, the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation grant approval.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to our second delegation, item 8.2. Our MLA, Mr. Grant Hunter. Mr. Tebow.
So I'd given council a handout. This is all the questions that were sent to Mr. Grant Hunter. And not that we can't speak anything outside of this, but this is, I believe, what MLA Hunter had prepped for. Over to you, MLA Hunter.
All right, good to be here. So I wanted to, there's a couple of questions that were presented, and so I think what I'll do is I just want to do a little bit of an update. We did receive a Q1 update on our finances, and so I think it's important to be able to provide that for you. So we have a surplus that's projected to be 2.9 billion, up from the 200 and some odd million that we had believed it was going to be, which is, sorry, it's always good. It's always good to have that. So where that came from is, so we had an increase in the personal income tax revenue. So as you know, we had 202,000 people move in the province last year. There's a little bit of a lag effect. Those ones are actually not in the system really. We're not really seeing that value. We're seeing the ones before that. So next year we'll see a little bit of that 202,000. The year after that, majority of those. So it's about a 3-year lag effect that helps us, which kind of affects our ability to, or affects us in terms of our ability to provide services to those people that are moving in. I want to put it in perspective. In 2014, the cost of government was about $40 billion. 10 years later, the cost is $70 billion. Now, we've added about 900,000 people in that time, which is a good thing, but 900,000 people is costing us an extra $30 billion to provide services. Something, I mean, obviously inflation was 21% during that time, and then the increase in population was 29% in that 10 years. So that's a 40 or 50%, basically a 50% increase, but it is a 50% increase in terms of population and inflation. The problem is that we are seeing almost a 75% increase in the cost of government. So it's unsustainable. The Premier has put me on a committee, and it's a productivity sustainability committee, basically. It's a cabinet committee that we're kind of looking at this. And I didn't actually know those figures until I got on this, and then they gave us basically a brief and showed us this. So I thought it was important to present to you because we are different levels of government, but municipalities, I just was listening to Tim do a great job of presenting, but he's presenting again the need. The need is for housing. You guys need to help. We need to help. Hopefully we can get these projects done. But I will tell you that because of the lag effect of having so many people move into the province, we are really struggling to keep up. And so I want to say that and hopefully, I don't want to, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings if I say, well, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to come up with the money for this or that. But just realize that that's kind of where we're at. I don't sit on Treasury Board, so I don't see the ins and outs and all these things. But I can tell you I do know enough about it because I did sit on there for 4 years to know that we're struggling. For probably the next 3 or 4 years, it's going to be really tight budgets. So another good thing that's happening is we actually have an increase of about 2.5 billion in terms of non-renewable resources. So that puts us at $19.8 billion forecasted for the year. And think about this. For personal income tax, we bring in $16.1 billion. For non-renewable resources, we bring in $19.8 billion. It always shocks me when I hear any Albertan saying we need to go off of oil and gas. I'm like, do you not know that would absolutely gut our services and what we provide to Albertans? So I think it's important to remember that as well. Expenses have kept pretty low. We have seen an increase of about 663 million for budget 2024. That is mostly trying to be able to address enrollment for schools that you can't deal. There's no lag effect on that. You have to, that year when they come in, you got to be able to provide the spaces for them. And then it's also disaster relief. So some good news. We have a $2 billion contingency fund, and we still have $1.4 billion left, which is kind of really good because usually after we're not through the fire season, but we're through a lot of it. And so that's really a good sign. I mean, last year at this time, we were in real trouble, right? We were way over the $2 billion contingency that we had. So I'll just maybe finish with one last really good news story, and that is that we recognize that there's a possibility that the world will move away from oil and gas as a stable. I don't know how they're going to do it. Like, I don't know if the technology is there, but there seems to be a whole lot of kerfuffle about doing that. And if that happens, you can see what that would do to our province. We don't want to become the Rust Belt of the United States, where you see basically just kind of got hollowed out and all the jobs went to China. So what we did is we came up with a strategy to be able to build up our Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund. Our goal is to be able to have that anywhere between $250 billion to $400 billion by 2050. Now, the way that we're doing that, we haven't announced this and we haven't provided that to the media yet, but I will tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to retain the earnings in that fund, and then whatever we get over and above in terms of surplus will be broken up three ways. So a third of it will go into the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund. And the neat thing about it is we're already going to be at the end of this year at $25 billion, which has gone up from basically, when I got in 2015, that was sitting at about $17, $18 billion. So you can see for the first time in a long time, in decades, we've actually started putting money into that fund. And that actually in 2015, between 2015 and 2019, no money went in, only money came out. You can't spend any of the principal, but all of the money that it was earning came out and went into general coffers. So now they're retaining all of that. So if we were to make $2 billion in terms of a return on investment, that would be retained within that fund, and then that's compounding, and that's how we think we can get to the 250 to 400 billion. And that's the magic number that will help offset that 4 billion to 19 billion dollars that we receive from royalties. That's how we're going to try to be able to keep it going, keep the lights on. So that's our strategy. I thought that was something I wanted to share with you that would provide some good information. Mr. Mayor, did you want to have the councillors ask different questions about the issues, or did you want me to just dive into them? Or
I think
because I just received information about. You guys wanted to talk about the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program, housing, rail spur, regional water, wastewater, and the old Barron's Eureka building.
Right. Yeah, that's the list. So I mean, that's if you're able to elaborate on that, any of those items at all, that would be helpful, and or whatever questions council may have.
Okay, sure. So the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program is it was oversubscribed, and it is the problem is the federal government is not giving us really what we need. So and they're actually talking about actually decreasing. So I can go into the details. Like, I know that you guys have put together a good team that works alongside our ministry and has regular meetings with Minister Yassine and the team. And I think that's helpful because everybody who's in the trenches can continue to tell them. But I have to say, I've talked to Minister Yassine. He's a good friend of mine, and he says, look, I'm 100% with you, we need more. We've tried a couple of things. We've tried to take in-house, like into the province, the whole immigration program like Quebec does. And the federal government has told us to go pound sand on that. So I'm not sure if there's anything we can do on that issue. But really, we have 9,750 that we're allowed to bring in, and we have over 100,000 that are asking for this program. So, and you know, there's a designated communities, and Tabor is one of the designated communities. So they recognize that there is a real need down here, which is helpful. But I think we only received, what, 11 this year so far, AAIP applications.
From this
From
area
Tabor,
or for this area?
Yeah. Not applications, but actually where it went through the process.
Okay, yeah.
So this program, our goal is still to try to be able to bring it in-house to the province so that we can actually get the immigrants that, or the AAIP amounts that we need. Because in this area, you can't expand. We can't expand the irrigation. We can't expand the agri-food processing. All the work that we've been doing on this whole corridor between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat there's a couple of things that are going to really knock it off. No housing, and if we can't get the people to do it, the expansion. So the minister knows that, the premier knows that. And so please be patient with us. I don't know what else to tell you other than we're struggling with the federal guys. That's where we're struggling.
All right, Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, and Mr. Hunter. The only question I have is that this program supported 70 local employers. It brought in 191 employees to the area, plus it brought 220 family members. And so what other program can we help our local businesses attract and retain employees for this region if we can't use the temporary foreign worker program?
Yeah, and that's, we have a Alberta is Calling campaign that's out there. I mean, if you're not trying to, be part of that, where there's like job fairs and that sort of thing, then you need to be. I mean, that's absolutely critical. So, the premier has been more clear in terms of what her, when she says she wants to double the size. It was more about immigration or emigration versus immigration. She's like, there's people from Vancouver and from Toronto that are just sick and tired of the crime and the cost of living and everything, and they're looking for places like Alberta to be able to come to. And so being able to access people who are looking to come through that emigration vein is really what I would say that's the biggest strategy.
If I can just add to that, also the Alberta Job Grant has kind of been put on hold, and this is used by employers to help get the unskilled skilled. And so if some of that 2.whatever billion could be used to help fund that program until there's more funding for that too. I think local businesses also use that program, which has been put on hold.
When you say it's been put on hold, I'm not sure I understand.
Until March 31st, 2025.
It's a program review, is that what you're saying?
It just says it's closed now until March 31st, 2025.
Yeah, it's what we call a program review, so.
Okay.
They have to do that on a regular basis just to make sure that there's no fraud, no issues with it. And
isn't this AIP on hold also until end of September for review?
well, it's not on. That isn't, because we're just filled. We just filled all the numbers, and so until the next one comes up, then we can start bringing them.
Mr. Tebow, did we see something on that to suggest that?
Yep, and it's exactly for the reasons MLA Hunter suggested. It's overprescribed. All the numbers have come in, so when the program reopens, we get allocations, and I don't know if the allocations are sounding like they're going to be as large as they were last time around. I don't know. We don't know what those numbers are.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I will say also that I know that there were some concerns about fraud within, some employers were being fraudulent. I'm not sure that that was happening down here, but in Alberta, that has been a concern that some employees have been raising with the ministry. And so they've tried to bring up some strategies to be able to address that as well. I think that was also one of the reasons why they actually put a hold on that, because they were concerned about how many they were getting in.
Right. Okay.
Concerns.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that program? All right.
So the next one was the regional water and wastewater project. So I'm a little embarrassed by the briefing I got on this one. So we already know that we received money for this, and I got a briefing saying that there's no money for this. So I actually kind of laughed at that one. I was like, okay, well, that guy didn't know what he was doing. No precedent here, is there? Government doesn't know what they're doing. Yeah, don't quote me on that. But that program's going well. I think that there's some really good consultation going on to be able to understand what those wastewater needs are for the corridor. The reason why we got it is because we had a solution, or we were looking at solutions for the corridor versus just individual communities, and that's why we got it in. Lethbridge didn't. So Lethbridge is still part of my mandate. Like, we're still trying to get everybody within Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, but they didn't get that $200,000 because they just didn't have a regional focus, and all of those programs are moving to that regional focus. So that's still moving on really well. I've got some outreach that I'm going to be doing with MNP on that, and in the next few weeks, which will be good. But looking good from my perspective. We're going to get some good data on that.
All right. Anybody got any questions on that whatsoever? All right, we're jumping around a little bit. Back to housing incentives.
Okay. Let's see here. So look, there's a few major things that we're working on. Number one is mental health issues. Like, we're spending a whole lot of money on mental health in this province. After COVID, it just really became the new pandemic. So we're spending a lot of money on that. We're spending a lot of money on the affordable housing as well. However, there is a bit of a problem with that, and that is that government doesn't move as quickly. When it's a government solution, it does not move as quickly as a private sector solution. That's just, I could show you lots of studies to show that. And so I think that by the time we get our ducks in a row and actually get things out and get the tenders out and the RFPs and everything, I think the private sector will have actually figured it out. You're already seeing the private sector having some of the best years in terms of housing markets increases. I think 4,500 new housing starts in the first quarter of this year, which is great. We probably need triple that, of course, but the reality is that I think the private sector is going to be able to come up with the solutions faster than we can. We do have money that we've set aside to address this issue, but as the private sector increases supply, it'll drive the equilibrium price down, as long as that demand doesn't keep on going up. But indications are is that this year we're going to see more than 202,000 people move into this province. If you take first quarter numbers and times them by 4, we're going to see more than 202,000 people. So I don't know how long that's going to last for, but we've seen these kinds of booms and busts. Anybody who's been in Alberta knows that these kind of boom busts happen all the time in Alberta.
All right, Councillor Rumford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going to the private sector, I was part of CMHC privately, in a low-cost housing. And in 2012, I could only rent for $593 for a bachelor. last October, it's up to 1,101, right? That is what's went up 180% on what a landlord can now charge under the government program, like getting the money and then they set a rate. So obviously, private sector is going to see that money there and they're going to start building, right? But I do think the province has to help out a little bit, because as much as the private will be able to make more money and build more houses, they're still going to be working for themselves. They're not going to look for that little guy, right? Like with the cherry and me and stuff like that. So I still think we got to support that provincially, some of that.
Well, look, I appreciate what you're saying, but these markets have done this many times. The reason why we've seen such huge increases is because of inflation, right? The cost of everything has increased substantially because of supply chain issues, because of COVID. You can kind of follow it because of the amount of money that's been put on by governments. So this is all that stuff kind of is affecting those prices, but markets do ebb and flow. That's what a market-based system does. And so I think that yes, we're going to be putting money into it. We are, but remember, these things don't happen fast. And I can tell you, I do not believe that the government will actually address this issue faster than the market. Just my personal opinion, but I cannot see how the government. I've seen how slow they move. I used to be the red tape reduction minister. I cannot see them moving as quickly as what the private sector can do. When you add more supply onto the market, you will drive down that equilibrium price. We are already starting to see prices of materials come down substantially, which again will decrease that. And then the price of mortgages will also come down. The price, the Bank of Canada has dropped their prime lending rate by another 25 basis points, and they're going to do that. They're not doing fast enough, according to Doug Ford, which I think they're going to do a lot faster. I think they're going to add, maybe 2 or 3 of those this year. As that happens, I think the private sector will move so much faster than what the government will do. So we could have a philosophical chat about this, but I really think that's what's going to happen. Hindsight will tell us in a year, 2 years.
All right, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question then, I understand your perspective on the private sector getting more involved than the provincial government, but then could the provincial government, because of the huge immigration that we're seeing right now, and I think that's also driving the kind of housing crisis that we're in, I think incentives from the provincial government then is a huge thing that the provincial government can do for the private sector, for instance, right? Because then that drives them to then provide more housing for all these people that are coming in. Because yes, not only are we seeing the effects of inflation, but we're seeing huge effects from immigration.
Yeah.
And that's also then, there's nowhere for these people to live. And that's then becomes also then a problem for homelessness, and then it's kind of like the rippling effect. And so I was just wondering, are there other incentives that the provincial government kind of has in place, or that then these private sector can partake of?
The incentives that I've seen work the most is usually coming from the municipal side. The incentives to be able to free up land quicker, to be able to, Calgary's done a great, I think, well, not Calgary per se, but I would say probably the outlying communities have done a better job. But I would say freeing up the land, that's why we're seeing record builds this year, because the lands have been freed up at a record pace, so they've kind of cut through the red tape and they're moving on these things a lot faster. In terms of incentives from the province, if you've got some ideas, I'd love to hear them.
Not on the top of my head. I was just wondering if you knew it.
I don't know of any, but again, I'm all ears if you have any ideas.
I guess one thing that gives us the higher priority is like an apartment complex type format. We did mention that when Premier Smith was here also, but we haven't had anything here since the 80s in that regard. I know you got to entice investors, but how can we do that? We have our incentives here, with the commercial and the residential builds as well, but is there something with, is that a possibility? Have you seen that ever?
Well, okay, so look, from an economic perspective, those incentives that they're looking for is the cost of capital, you know. Like an investor will start building more if the price of capital comes down. So that's a federal issue. I mean, next time you have Martin Shields in here, just tell him, you know, keep on pushing on that, because that price, as the price point comes down, more investors are going to move into the market. But that, until that price point comes down and they can see that the return on investment is going to be there, they're not going to build. So, like, you know, there, I guess, you know, Councilor McLean, to your point, we could take taxpayers' dollar and basically just transfer it to a builder and say, you know, we'll subsidize you to be able to build these things out. I don't think that's, I think that's actually not a good strategy, because, you know, taxpayers still paying for it. I think the market will rectify itself. I think it's already rectifying itself. In time it will. But we used to build airport hangars for one of my businesses before, and we were building up in Fort McMurray. And Fort McMurray at the time was just, you just couldn't find places. And so the town council up there, they changed the bylaws so that you could rent out individual rooms, and that's what they were specifically doing. So some people were just renting out a room, and it cost them $1,000 a room up there. Now you'd never pay that now. Like a basement suite is, you know, $1,800, $2,000 for 3-bedroom basement suite up there now. But at the time, that's what they were doing, and that's how they were getting the people places to. It wasn't nice to live in those types of, you know, shared accommodation, but that's what they were doing. So again, that's again a municipal solution. But I don't know if the provincial government at the time, I wasn't in politics at the time, but I remember the provincial government was like, well, we don't know what to do. Like, you guys can figure it out yourself.
All right, thank you. No other questions in that regard? Rail spur?
Yeah, so there's a STIP. In STIP, there is a way of being able to apply for a rail spur under STIP. Now, the STIP program is for usually like bridges. You know, that's usually where most of the STIP money goes to. Actually, not 100% of it goes to those culverts and bridges and stuff. But there's a provision in there that says you can actually apply for rail spur. And so Coaldale applied for that to get that. They didn't get it. But the minister said, I like what you guys are doing, what you're thinking. We're going to figure out a way of being able to get you some money to help you. But they are funding it 100% themselves right now to be able to make that happen with the new cold project there and the other ones that in that industrial site. So if the minister comes up with the solution, I'll let you know, because, you know, I think everybody needs to know. I think everybody needs to have a spur into those industrial areas. I think it's a great idea. I think it's fantastic. But right now, I don't know what that envelope is. So I can't give you any more information other than once I find out where that is, you know, the minister's probably going to make up something else, and then I can let you know what that is.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just think it's important, especially for our whole acre food corridor. You know, we're value added, seeking all of these, you know, manufacturing facilities. It's just essential that all of us small communities have those to go into our industrial area to promote that.
Well, Tabor's not a small community.
Well,
it's
growing.
My writing.
Yeah.
But
no doubt.
I appreciate if you guys can look into that.
Yeah.
That would be great.
So I'm pretty sure Darren probably, you know, took a look at what they did there in Coaldale, and I imagine the mayor's probably taken, you know, chatted with the mayor over there. But they moved heaven and earth pretty quickly and bought up a whole bunch of land to be able to make sure that spur could get in. I mean, they moved very quickly on that. You guys would, you know, you have a plan for that? Have you figured out how it's going to be able to get in from there to your industrial park? You know, all that stuff, I would say, you know, make sure that you've got it figured out how to be able to do that. And then, you know, when you find out if that money is available, then you can actually move on that. Because that'll be critical for being able to land some of these deals, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Thibault?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually mention, so the rail spur and the green inclusive building grant program and the Barons Eureka building was more asking for advocacy, where you could provide that advocacy for us up the financial chain, I guess, is kind of what most of these were, what these last three were about. As far as the rail spur goes, we do have an alignment. We have MP that's done a costing exercise for us, so we are ready to go with that. We're going to be applying with our grant writer to that STIP fund when it does become available. It's about $11.5 million worth of activity, but we did have a rail alignment previous. There's a few pieces that kind of they disappeared over the years, but for the most part, we have an alignment ready to go. So yeah, we'd be very interested in any advocacy that your office could provide.
Look, I think I've talked to the mayor multiple times about the need to have a rail spur into your industrial area, that will be critical. So you've got my support on that for sure.
All right, thank you. So any more on that green inclusive program at all, or is that just tie in?
Sorry.
The next item 5. Green and inclusive community building.
Yeah, that is, I mean, once I actually know what that envelope looks like, I'll let you know, but I don't have that envelope right now to tell you.
Okay, fair enough. And the last item would be the old Barons Eureka.
Yeah. So that one is, I mean, we've been working on that since 2015, like 9 years now. And what's interesting is the government passed a bill that was trying to address an issue, but they passed a bill that said you cannot transfer an asset from the province to another, entity for $1 or for a nominal amount. Because what was happening is they were doing that, and then these guys were taking that and selling it, fixing it up a little bit, and then selling it at fair market value. And so the province was like, well, we're losing millions and millions of dollars for this, and so they stopped it. They said, we're not doing that anymore. But the problem is that in this situation, the building actually only has a couple of options. You got to tear it down, which would be the cost of the province, or you give it to you guys, right, for a nominal price. You're not going to pay $700,000 for it, which is what they appraised that at some point. Now, from what I understand, it costs $700,000 to fix the roof in there. So, does that mean that you minus the actual cost and that's going to be worth now $0 or $1? I don't know how they're going to take a look at that, but are you guys interested in having that building no matter what, or do you just want to have that building or that place be torn down?
Tear it down and put up a low cost.
Well, I think there's always been interest, but it's every time we turn around and we want to go for it, we get roadblocked by some other hurdle that they're trying to get us to sign off on for liability and blah, blah, blah. Like it became very scary.
Well,
right?
This is government.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, like we were willing to take it, but with this caveat, that's what they're suggesting.
So
take on the liability side.
So if you remember correctly, those who have been on for Jack was there too, but so they did a stage 1 environmental assessment, okay, and then they had to do a stage 2 because they found there was in the building. I think the way they described it, it sounded terrible, and then you looked at what that actually meant. It was like mouse poop or something like that. So that was contaminant, and then at the time when we were looking at it, I remember it was leaking, but the roof was still fine, and if they had just mitigated it at that point, or even sold it, like you guys would have been able to fix it up, and we could have gotten into the FCSS building like we talked about. But they didn't do it. They sat on it. It's got paper shuffled, and now we've got a major roof problem in there, and I don't know whether or not the building is worth it. So I just like this is the sort of stuff again that I have seen like 100-fold in government. It's just so big. So
they must realize that it's costing. Like if they had given it to us 9 years ago, how much would they have saved now?
they don't care.
I know it makes no sense.
Some junior bureaucrat or middle management bureaucrat, they don't care. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the reality. That's what we've seen in 9 years, right? We've seen with that building, that's a classic example of just pencil pushers, shoveling papers, and it's nonsensical. But that's the reality, and now we don't have a building. I think it's probably gonna have to get torn down. And now it'll cost the province $2 million to tear it down and remediate the land. And they're like, well, we'll have to do that.
They'll just do it.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part of the whole thing.
Well,
Like, there's no common sense in their thinking.
No,
We've lost that.
it agreed. And I mean, I was I advocated pretty hard for that. I mean, during the 4 years when the NDP were in there, I mean, it was like talking to a brick wall. But after that, there's no excuse, right? Like, we had friendlies in there, we had ministers. I was a minister myself. I was on Treasury Board. All those things should have all lined up. We should have been able to get it in that first couple of years. Couldn't do it. It could not make it happen, which is an indictment on. That's why I come back to this whole thing with housing, and I can tell you, I believe that the private sector will figure this out and work it out a whole lot faster than government will. So maybe that's cynical after 9 years of doing this job, but
Yeah. Councillor Beckman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we in now general discussion here, or pretty well?
Yeah, I think that's got that covered as far as that goes at this stage. Sure, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter, for your presentation. You were very clear. You're very objective in my view. I think you were basically telling us there's no new money available because there's no new money. That $2.9 billion is just a pittance when it comes to comparing that to the actual cost, what is going to happen with inflation and the influx of the population increase. And infrastructure costs increasing ever so much.
Yeah.
That's my statement to that. And I appreciate the fact that you repeatedly said, the private sector can do way better than government. What is government? It's just the people of Alberta. It's the government, right? And the people of Tabor, we're the government. But the private sector can do it better, more efficiently, in my view. I agree with you. All I can say is that we cannot ask the people of Alberta to help us out of our difficulties which we might have. And the people of Alberta cannot ask the people of Canada to help out of the difficulties that we might have in Alberta. I think we have to look after ourselves. Now, is there help available to some extent because of the larger context of more money being available? Of course. But I just like to, this is my 20th year in council, and I've heard that all before so many times, that, guys, you cannot forever rely on some other entity, order of government, to help us out of a difficulty. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, sir.
amen.
All right, thank you. There were no other questions? Councillor Sorensen?
Just a comment for Highway 3, the twinning of it. Near the bean plant, my parents have some property, and the ditch is being built and constructed. But during the heavy rains, it actually flooded back into their land. And so I just want for everyone to be aware that hopefully everything's being constructed and sloped the proper way to prevent flooding, which, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try and prevent flooding for farmland. So, yeah, just a comment.
I remember when we got that, I just had, I was in the car when I got the news that we were going to get that money, right? 150 million at the time. That's 170 million now. And I remember just yelling as loud as because it's been decades in the making trying to get this right. And I thought that it would all be just like downhill from there. It's like there's problems in this problem. There's problems with with everything. I mean now all the problems start. It's and now we're $20 million over budget already. And we barely started it. And then people are looking for this change order and they're looking for that change order. And I'm like, guys, when you make a change order, it's in the magnitudes of millions. It costs, right? I was like, don't you remember we were consulting on this thing before, and that's when you were supposed to tell us what we're, so we could do all the design build and everything. And now you're coming back after we're already started this thing. I said, that's those change orders. They're going to come back to us and say, oh, yeah, it's a couple million.
That's what's going to delay it.
Well, it's starting. I just don't want to have to go back to Treasury Board and say, give me another $10 million because they're going to just say, go pound sand. They will. They will honestly say that because everybody said education needs 200 schools right now. 200 schools right now. I mean, it's a big, big ask. And Treasury Board has no idea how they're going to build them. So I just want to make sure, like, you know, like those types of things, they're trying to mitigate. I think they're doing a pretty good job of mitigating lots of those things.
Yeah, they are. It's just, you know, we have to be thoughtful of, you know, the whole construction of it. And I'm sure they have, and like, I'm just a dumb councilwoman that's never had experience building a highway, but yeah, just, you know, there's problems
Yeah.
that are coming afold, and I just hope that they correct them so that we don't
Sure.
have other problems.
We'll, I talked with Darren Davidson, who's like the Southern Regional Director, you know, weekly, and he's, you know, he's got like 6 of these projects going on, and he's trying to do as best he can. So be patient with him, I guess.
All right, and thank you so much, MLA Grant Hunter, for your presentation, your input, and your attendance. We look forward to meeting up with you a little later here tonight yet. So, you bet. Thank you. Right, just to confirm, any media inquiries?
There are none.
All right. Just ask for a motion to move into closed session for the remaining items. Councilor McLean, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.